Good evening, Council, Mayor. Have a few things to update you on operations and maintenance. Quick comment that even though we have snow on the ground, it's kind of hard to think about summer, but we have events, schedules, and coordination meetings well underway for the season to include Windermere Barefoot, 4th of July, and Easter egg hunts so far, fairly in-depth into those, so those are going strong. And camp registrations have begun. It's really hard to think about summer right now, but it's a glorious thought. A little bit of a Parks and Arts update. We, in the last week, had an offer of a donation from Liberty Lake. From a Liberty Lake resident. His name is Dick Canfield, and he is, we just lost our, oh wait, there it is. He's offered to donate 6 serigraphs. Not 100% sure what a serigraph is, but it's...
Genetics personality.
That is.
Talk loud.
Being radioactive?
I wasn't saying anything. Trying to turn it on.
So anywho, Leroy Neiman, I don't know if you've heard of Leroy Neiman. I had not, but he's quite famous. I don't quite know the history. My Parks and Arts commissioners can probably elaborate. But anyhow, he's willing to donate these. They're in his family trust. Yeah, it's on. Well, we'll see the pictures here in a little bit. So I shared the 6 pictures up here. They're pretty interesting. They're kind of like
They're numbered, so they're a collection. He's going to get them appraised and go through the donation process.
yes, and he's willing to donate them to
So
the
that's a
city.
sectional of Bixby Uni.
Thank you.
The first one is one of the Tavern on the Green. Keep going. That one's outdoor. I think that one's that one might be Tavern on the Green. That one is very likely McCrory's Whiskey Bar, for those of you that drink whiskey, which I am not. It's a historic place that he actually sat down and drank scotch with Mr. Neiman. He got interested in better. That one I think is the Chicago Key Club Bar. The little light in the middle is the light off of the ceiling. Gorilla Family. This is goes back to the time when who was went to Africa? Jane Goodall. He commissioned this during that time. She commissioned this.
So
And there's a self-portrait that he's going to throw in.
So basically, if you had any feedback on where you might think that these would be a good fit to be placed, they're 3x3. We're fairly limited here in City Hall. We've got a few spots for that. You know, we've got our hallways, but obviously they aren't as visible to the public as in this area. I don't know if back here, how you feel about, maybe doing an ever-changing art display on the back and rotating some of this artwork. If you had any thoughts, we'd be open for feedback. I know the Parks and Arts Commission is working together to kind of come up with some ideas. They've even ventured into displaying at the library and displaying at some of our local businesses and even into the schools, especially the new schools, as possibilities. So,
Yeah, I was thinking the schools and library would be some good ideas.
okay. So we'll keep pursuing that. And then a nice touch, the city did a thank you to our residents for snow. So our latest snow update is there's been a lot of snow and there's been a lot of plowing. A lot of long nights, so the crew has done a really good job. We fed them, cared for them, made sure they didn't wither away. A lot of communication going on with the public through the city website, through Facebook, social media, trying to get information out there. Sometimes I feel like I'm pounding too much, but I honestly, on social media, I don't think you can do too much information. So trying to keep those alerts going between the hours of 7 a.m.-ish to 8 p.m.-ish. No alerts going out in the night hours. We, for the most part, have gotten some good feedback from the public, obviously some comments.
I was just going to say, Jen, the text-based alerts and broadcasts are really valuable. The subscribe now function from the website, along with text, and specifically to the snow crews and actions, to me, I find to be the most valuable. It's immediately available as a push function, so thanks, I really appreciate that.
Good, that's good to know. And every time we post, it's like, sign up for Notify Me, sign up for Notify Me, and every time we do that, we see this creep of more numbers and more numbers. I think we're about 250 right now, which is pretty good, so.
Competition with parking?
Yes, that's, I think, always going to be a struggle. That was a struggle. Put that on Facebook quite a bit, particularly when the guys were mentioning they were hitting some areas. We actually, I was going with the idea of posting notifications when they were happening, and the car situation and trash cans was becoming such an issue that I actually started posting ahead. So where are they now and where are they headed to kind of hopefully give people a heads up so they can go move their cars, at least give them as much time as possible to get out and do that. It still doesn't solve the problem fully. So we have had some issues with our neighborhoods where there's some wows, where the guys just couldn't get to. And Stephen and I have talked about that on how we can best deal with those situations. And some unhappy citizens with berms. Unfortunately, the berms are
That's the way it works.
nature of the beast.
Perhaps in the upcoming off-season, you'll be able to get together with your crews and see if there's any action required as far as posting or snow event, parking, etc. in some of the more rougher neighborhoods where you're having trouble, maybe drivers are having trouble, and get it back to us so we can consider whatever action you think
Okay.
your staff thinks is best to move the snow removal along.
Okay. And the really neat thing that happened during these last few snow events was kind of got a groove for connecting the people in need, mostly elderly and disabled in our community, with people who were willing to volunteer to shovel. And it was kind of incredible to see how many of our own Parks and Arts commissioners, planning commissioners, and general public, church groups, Boy Scouts stepped up and were right there to respond to people who needed to be shoveled out and could not. And there were several. There were many people who could not get out. And so we posted this thank you. It's kind of hard to read, but kind of a shout out to all the volunteers. We didn't want to name people specifically, but how much it's appreciated.
We call them snow angels.
Yeah, our guys are snow fighters and the volunteers are snow angels.
Great.
So,
Pretty accurate.
So moving forward, tonight's agenda, there is the first half of the purchase for the fireworks display. I don't know if you saw that in there. There will be a second one after the event, so just a heads up. And that is part of the 3-year agreement we had approved last year. This is year 2. There will be one more year, and we will renew that. And then upcoming on March 5th agenda, the England Chess Agreement will be here before you, finally. Sean. We have a preschool, we have another one, Sean. Preschool day camp wants to have a day camp in the summertime at Rocky Hill Park. And then working on a symphony agreement for reimbursement to present to the city council for bringing the symphony and reimbursing FOPP per recommendation of the Parks and Arts Commission. So again, you'll have time to review it, discuss it, ask questions. FOPP is planning on being here to answer questions, and that was budgeted in the 2019 budget. So that hopefully we'll have on the next agenda or two. Are there any questions? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. So I'm going to just quickly share with you, I've provided you with a written report, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my written report. You also have a food truck code charter or code amendment project charter that kind of gives the background, the scope, and on the back of it you'll see a proposed schedule. It is a fairly aggressive schedule, and the timeline will slip depending upon whether or not we need more than one workshop. I think that we can achieve it in one workshop. However, I do want to note that we will be reaching out to both our tasting room entrepreneurs, a little cluster of tasting room entrepreneurs, as well as our brick and mortar stores to participate in that, so that we get a very balanced perspective as we have that discussion. So that's as I had promised you. If you have specific questions or comments, or some things that you would like to, ideas that you have about what you might like to see added to the scope, I'd love to hear from you, either here or individually. But I think I'd like to dedicate the PEBS time today to Barbara Barker's going to present you with our 2018 development stats, and then Scott's going to follow up with just a status update on Trailhead and some of our other public works projects right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Barbara right now. Last thing that I wanted to mention is we're doing a switch up in terms of how we're doing our 6 p.m. workshops, because it seems that we have all the long-winded people on one night, and so we'll be switching to March 5th. And at the March 5th PEBS report, I'd like to share with you some staff recommendations for city-initiated comp plan and code amendments for 2019. So you have that to look forward to. With that, I turn it over to Barbara.
So is this not working? You just said it's not working.
It's working now.
Lisa,
Lisa,
hi.
Hi, sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to get your comment on the food truck, okay, on the amendment. What is the driving force behind this amendment? It's already been replanning, we've already had an ordinance passed on it, that was a couple of years ago. Why are we revisiting?
This was the outcome of last council meeting's workshop, where it was recommended that we revisit this in light of, and it's specific to just the light industrial zone, and it's specific to this cluster of tasting rooms and the potential value of allowing it in a limited circumstance. So this was at the recommendation of City Council. They asked that Planning Commission take this topic up.
Thank you for indulging me. I wasn't here at the last meeting, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start with process improvements that we put in place last year. There's 10 of them, and they're fairly significant. The first, is the code audit that's being provided to all of our applicants at the pre-application stage. So what Lisa does, she puts together a document that actually walks them through the code. These are all the applicable sections, so they know exactly what they need to address going forward into the CDs, or the construction documents. The second thing is we're requiring all of our applicants, when they come to the design review subcommittee, that they have all of those, again, the code sections are laid out in place, and so it's just lined up one by one so that it's easier for the code guys to go through. The biggest change has been we're doing everything electronically, so with the light of getting everything paperless, all of our applications are now electronic, so they can email those to us, and we also have an FTP site if the files are too large. All of our electronic review is done on screen, so we don't do that by paper anymore. And then when we give it back to them, rather than giving them big rolls of paper, we're giving them a PDF file that then they go print and have it out on the job site. So everything's electronic. A lot of this was really actually pushed by records retention to limit the amount of paper that we have that we need to store in the back room. So literally everything's now is electronic. The other thing we're doing is we're also doing accepting payments over the phone. So it used to be if you wanted to make a payment, you literally had to come to City Hall to do that, which was pretty onerous for some of our contractors who live far away from us. So they can just now call with a credit card and do that over the phone. Paperless permit files, so where we used to have green files for all of our projects, now a lot of our projects don't have any paper at all. It's just all on the computer. Next thing we did is, it used to be that we literally sent out pieces of paper to people when their permits were getting ready to expire, which seemed a little silly. And so we're emailing all those notifications now. And the last thing is, when you do a residence, the last thing you do to close out a house is to prove that you passed all the energy code. And so it used to be that we literally bring back this little piece of paper that was, covered with mud and scratched from being on site for 6 to 8 months. And now all we do is we take a picture of it, and that works as verification. So, yay! Paperless, it's a good thing. So let's talk about last year. We collected just over 1.1 million in total fees. You can see there on the bottom that 585K of that was in permit fees, 57K in zoning and subdivisions, 205 in plan review, and then you can see these two added together come up to our hardware mitigation of 227,000 for last year. So let's just talk, this is overview, so high view stuff. And you should, if you remember, this is the same chart that we used at 6 months, so we've just filled out the final column for 2018 with the total numbers. So this is what we're talking about. The big ones that we had this year in terms of commercial work is we have the new middle school, the medical office building that's over there on Country Vista. We had 2 larger leased buildings with leased spaces. Oh my, did you do that or did I do that?
I did that.
Oh, okay, thank you. And the RV campground, the cider house that's again over in the industrial area. So we had a total of 10 projects of scale, 21.7 million in project value. And if you can back off for a little bit, this right here, over, can you back out again? Zoom it back. This has to do with the TI. So one of the things I know that Mayor was interested in seeing the commercial stats. So we broke out TI, so now you can actually see the progression of TI. We talked about this last time. TI in 2017 was huge. So we had 15 projects, 4.3 million. So it makes this look small, but if you compare it to this, because I think this year was actually extraordinary, I'd say we did a great year in TI. So we had 21 projects at 2.4 million. Pretty decent. We knew that Legacy Villas is pretty much coming to an end. We just issued Building W permits. So that is that right there. That's the last of the building projects. So we're saying that multifamily housing right now is slowing. We don't have any large ones in the pipeline currently, although we do have a building site plan that might bring in some more. In terms of single family, the 3 hot areas were Tritina, River Crossing North, and Rocky Hill, for just over 40 million in value. Which again, to me, this looks like just a nice even growth as we're moving along. Any questions on that one?
What's the, you're into 19 now, so what is your projection kind of for 19, do you think?
It's difficult to say. We have not had a lot of subdivisions commercially, and so we haven't seen too much action yet. I mean, obviously the high school's coming on. Can you think of something you want to talk about?
So in my planning report, I did include some current stats. We currently have 12 new single-family homes and 2 residential remodels in review at this moment. We also have 132 active new single-family homes. Again, we are expecting some large commercial with the high school, potentially with some other projects that are likely to come on the tail of that. We have the binding site plan pending for the Centennial properties adjacent to the high school, and we do expect that to come forward. We also understand that 80-some lots within, platted lots within Legacy Ridge West were just bought by a regional home builder, someone who's not worked here previously but works in the multi-state region. And so we are expecting those to come forward likely as spec houses. We also have pending, we have met with West Legacy Ridge developers, and they will be likely bringing forward the first edition as well as improvements related to both the first edition and second edition. So I think it's gonna be a hot year. As I've mentioned to Katie, we're kind of bracing for the tsunami that's about to hit.
Mayor, I just wanted to mention something that Barbara, if you know, that'd be great. So TI stand for tenant improvements, and you guys probably know that. Sometimes it's an indicator of new businesses coming into Liberty Lake, into an existing building, and they're doing an interior remodel. Sometimes it's businesses just moving from one location to another location. Do you know, are the TIs that are coming in, are they new businesses coming to Liberty Lake, or are they a business moving from one location to another? Or is it a mixture of both?
I think it would be a mixture of both. I mean, I can say like the dentist is moving into the new building over there on East Country Vista. They were actually here already, so some of it, you're right, it's just moving between, but some of it is brand new, particularly the ones that are going into the leased spaces at Knox and on Moulter. Those were all brand new.
Thank you.
All right, just to give you an idea of what the location of the ones that we just talked about, so as we mentioned, the 3 residential ones that are really moving, River Crossing North, Rocky Hill North, and Chertina Second. Here's our Orchard Park, which is one of the larger ones, as Lisa mentioned. River Crossing East, they are now putting in the infrastructure for that, so we would expect to see some final plating in this year, certainly. Here's your middle school, here's our new annexation, Yay Today, the new public yard, Legacy Villas, as we mentioned, just now finishing up. Those will all be completed in 2019. Here's the new Country Vista Medical Building we're talking about. That's a 2-story building, nice looking building. It's got the drive-through with another coffee shop and then 2 floors of medical facilities, clinics really. Here's your Trail Liquor Cider. I'm excited about that one. And warehouse office, and then the marijuana over on East End.
Could you point
Yeah.
towards the Legacy Ridge West final plat?
Right.
How many have they actually platted for, there, you know? How many?
81 or 83. Legacy Ridge West.
Yeah.
So they have 83 that have already platted. I think that, I want to say that it's in the range of 280 lots, I think 283 or something like that. One of which is in the M2 zone on the corner of East Country Vista and Legacy Ridge, so we don't know that's not specified, but the rest of them are either some of those middle housing types, townhouses and duplexes, and some of them are larger single-family lots.
Thank you.
All right, commercial construction. You'll note that I have in parentheses 2016 adjusted. In 2016, we had the wastewater treatment plant built, and that was skewing all of our data. So I normalized this by taking out that project, because again, that's not a typical project you're going to see every year. So these are the 3-year, 2016, 2017, 2018 for new construction. And this is the square footage that you're seeing. So again, 120 and we're up at 161. So I would say that that's a pretty good trend, good healthy growth. Obviously 3 years isn't a lot to see a trend, but you can get some idea. Again, 2017 was a banner year for TI. This is probably more realistic in terms of what we would expect to see in TI. Without the wastewater treatment plant, we're looking at 16.4 million in 2016, and we were at, again, 21.7 last year. Square footage, dollars per square foot. This is so I'm going to say that probably 133, 134, somewhere in that range is what we're seeing as a normal. What was interesting to me, though, was the TI. 2016 was at 17, 22, and 33. So to me, that's a clear trend, right? And it's clearly going up. An overview of permit activity of 2018 in commercial. As we mentioned, 10 new buildings valued at 21.7, 29 TIs at 2.4, with 36 HVAC replacements. So think someone calling saying, I need to put in a new furnace, that sort of thing. 17 plumbing, 2 re-roofs, 32 signs, 31 fire permits, and 61 right-of-way. And that's the summary for commercial. So if you have any questions on commercial, ask now, because we're moving on. All right. Single family. So what I'm a single family, I'm saying, I think we're seeing some nice steady growth. So the 25% increase is comparing 114 to 142. So these are the number of units per year. 2 years ago it was 114, this year we had 142. That's significant. Cost per square foot rebound, so interesting, and I have not analyzed this to figure what was happening, but 2016 we were at just over $85 per square foot, 2017 actually dropped, 2018 we rebounded up to where we were. Square footage, again, nice, good climb is what you'd expect, and we already mentioned 114 to 142. Where was it happening? In 2016, kind of the hot markets were Rocky Hill North, River Crossing, and Tritina. 2017, we had a big jump over at Stonehill, but again, River Crossing was a big mover. Notice that at that point, Tritina dropped down. Tritina was kind of the big story this year. So we had 26 homes in Tritina this last year. 142 totals we talked about, and you can sort of see the breakdown. The other one, as you've already mentioned, is Legacy Ridge was impressive. So started at 10, 16, and now we're at 22. So Legacy Ridge is definitely impressive in terms of the growth there.
Barb?
Yeah.
In 2017, directly talking about Tritina,
Yeah.
it's common knowledge that the developers hold back on their lots for sale, okay? And they pick and choose how many and when they're gonna put them out. Was that particularly evident to anyone in our planning department during 2017? Were they holding back? Was it a lack of sales that for available properties, or do we
Well,
have any idea?
they had the properties available to build on them. Let me show you in this next slide. We'll come back to this because I found this interesting, and I think it speaks to what you were just talking about. So in 2018, Tritina Second had 46 lots to work on. Rocky Hill North had 39, River Crossing South 36, River Crossing North 36, and Hawkstone we won't talk about. But if you see where they actually did their building, you can see what happened. So where did Greenstone put their efforts? River Crossing North. So they, in 1 year, they built out that entire final plat, which is impressive. And then their second one was Rocky Hill North, and then less effort was put into Tritina and River Crossing South.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on that one? And I will say too, and to your point, I have not, and Lisa, you might have more conversations with them than I do, but I would say, practically speaking, we're more reactive to what Greenstone is doing. I've never sat down with, Kevin and said, so Kevin, what's the, where do you think you're going to be building this next year? So I don't have those conversations with him. Lisa, you might.
I can't say that I have.
Well, our city administrator also brought out an excellent point, that a lot of this, regardless of what the developer doing or plans on doing, will still be driven by the demand of the public.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the demand is moving toward Tritina or Rocky Hill, whatever.
Yeah.
But that river district was quite a jump.
Yeah.
Quite a jump for 100%.
And I know the developer too, and we don't ask what their future plans are or timing, but they do say they get to a point where they only have so much capacity and so much resources to build,
Right.
and the demands are coming in for, it's all pretty obvious where the demand's coming in for development to occur.
Well, I do know that in terms of just construction crews, they were very, very tight last summer, so they really had to be very strategic in terms of where they put those resources, because there wasn't a lot of extra to work with. So they had to choose where to put that.
Interesting, good stats, thank you.
This is the overall permit activity for 2018 in residential, so 142 homes. I thought this was just 59 remodels at $755K, so that averages just about $13K per remodel. So these are not little remodels, these are lots of additions, basement remodels were big. 107 HVAC replacements, 10 plumbing, 26 re-roofs, 4 new solar installations, and 6 swimming pools. Who are our busiest builders? Greenstone was 91, Camden 17, Stonehill 6, Lexington 5, Gordon 4, Northwest Construction 4, and DSO 3. So these are the stats in summary for all of our construction, and again, sort of laid out so you can see 2016, 2017, and 2018 comparisons. And I'll give you a little second to just sort of digest some of that. I know there's a lot to see. But overview, I would say commercial is strong because we went from basically twice the number of projects, from 5 projects here in 2017 to 10 in 2018, double the value. We had multifamily obviously dropped off, as we've talked about, with Legacy Villas finishing off. Single, we've already talked about that, so I won't review it, but you can get an idea of what that looks like. The other thing I was sort of tracking is just the 55 plus communities, and 22% of our total now is in 55 plus.
What's, we used to have the dollar square foot in the commercial and the residential. Is that an estimate evaluation? Is that the actual valuation? Is there a correlation between the true cost of construction and?
That's a very good point. We typically, we base, most of these valuations are based off of the IBC chart. Yeah. So sometimes in commercial, if it's less expensive and they give us a contract, we will drop the value, but typically it's going to be based on the values from the state.
How about the, do you ever correlate or cross-check, I guess, like some of the homes, you know, what we anticipate that cost of construction,
To go back
$33
in?
or whatever, to the actual sale?
No, but I
because
like
we
that
can
idea.
find that out. Pardon?
I said I like that idea. I have
Then,
not done
you
that,
know,
but I think that's a good idea.
It's, one time, a number of years ago, on the fact that, you know, the valuation wasn't even, the Department of Revenue looks at your building permits, for instance.
Mhm.
Right. And they'll take a valuation that we got out of the IBC, or whatever that number was,
Right.
you know, and the actual real cost of construction and the invoices were significantly less than that. But the Department of Revenue comes back and says, well, you know, where does sales tax money go for the
Right.
number that you gave them, which is just kind of not a made-up number, but it is, in certain cases, not a reality.
It's not actual. That's true.
So I would suggest maybe we
Yeah.
check it a
Yep.
little bit.
I think that's a good point. All right, in terms of subdivisions, there's nothing new here. We had nothing new happen since when we last presented in June. That's the overview of what we did for commercial short plats. And then, I think Lisa already mentioned this, so we did, in final platting last year, we had 157 lots, so that was our capacity that we could have used. And then as we've covered, you can see, we still have obviously capacity in River Crossing South and Rutina Second and Rock Hill North. When we talked in July, there was a lot of interest just in terms of population data overall, so I decided to pull some data for you just to help you get an idea of where we are. So Liberty Lake, you can see we're actually number 10 in terms of fastest growing cities in the state, which is impressive. We're at 37% growth from 2010 to 2018. So ranked by population, we're the 81st largest city, but ranked by fastest population growth, we're number 10. Some statistics to look at. So this last year, we see 323 housing units that added 7% to our total number of available. Again, 142 single family, 171 were the multifamily. I did check with Legacy Villas. Their occupancy rate is running at 94. That was another one of the questions you guys had for us in July. That average is 2.3 persons per household. So currently, per OFM, we've got 4511 total housing units, 2,997 are single family, 11382 are multifamily, 132 are mobile homes. So you're looking at 66% in single family. The home ownership rate is 66, so what does that tell me? There's 66, that's 66, so that's telling me basically we have very, very low rentals in housing, so the rentals are in the multifamily. Building off of Lisa's report that she gave you on the build-out analysis, so at 1035 is where we are now. We're expecting to be here, so we are currently at 56% of projected build-out. Population is expected at 2042 for the full build-out. If you break that down into the housing, at build-out, we would have 82, just over 8,200 housing units, 52 in single-family, 2,800 in multifamily. That's it. Anything we're missing,
I always find it interesting, could you go back to that last slide?
Absolutely.
I always find it interesting when we see the projected build-out in year 2042. I remember just the other day, Katie and I were talking, and you made a comment that, you know, look, this probably wasn't 90 days ago, we heard 10,390, and you mentioned we're probably closer to 11,000 now. So I think our build-out is going to happen a lot quicker than that.
Right, the Office of Financial Management, they're always about a year in advance, they're a year in arrears, based on.
Yeah, so they base the 2018 estimates on the number of housing units as of April. So we have a 9-month lag. So we will be shortly submitting our stats for 2018. And round about July or August, we get our new population stats. But it's a pretty good algorithm that they use, pretty accurate in terms of the correlation to what ends up being census projections.
So we don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the, when do you hit your 18,708, it's driven by so many different factors, the economy, people's
Right.
desires of where they want to live. So
Yeah.
this is just a forecast.
Yes, yeah, the forecast is actually literally just doing a trend analysis. And so we'll rerun it every year as we get additional years of data, and that will get adjusted projections. But at the end of the day, it doesn't do much to account for the potential for at some point a flattening of the market or something like that. And the other thing that it doesn't do is it doesn't recognize that as you get closer to build out, it's tougher and tougher, and so it will slow down.
I think one critical thing that we, as the council and staff and citizens, keep in mind, that we don't fixate on 2042 thinking that when that's going to happen. For the simple reason, if we start thinking that, we can start looking at certain projects such as Trailhead or things that are going to be long-term. You know, well, we have plenty of time to plan for that. But in reality, we do not. We have to be aggressive on a lot of things, I feel. I think we're doing a good job of that.
Lisa, something that just crossed my mind, and I wish that one of the water and sewer commissioners were here, but we estimate that we're gonna have X number of single family, X number of apartments at build out, okay? Does that department take in consideration then, that when it comes to supply, storage, fire, do they take that build out number?
So we do share that information with the water and sewer purveyors, and so they do have that information. Frankly, depending upon the purveyor, they do a better or worse job of master planning, and in some cases, the purveyor is leaving it on the developer to build the capacity for that. And that, I mean, some of that is inherent in the capitalization fees they charge, but some of that is like you still have to put in your own pipe in the ground if there's not capacity in front of your on the frontage of your lot.
Mayor, before we go on, just, I know Scott has Trailhead and Harvard Road to give you an update on, but we have Central Valley School District here at 6:45
Oh, good.
because we are celebrating their annexation to our city, and so I don't know how you want to handle that, because we can take maybe Scott's report and roll it into this. It's up to you. Maybe we could take Scott's report and roll it into this. It's up to you.
Listen, I mean, it's right now, I see Ben's walked into the room, he's the highest paid person in this city. But, I guess, are we gonna pass something?
Well, I don't know, no, we're not going to pass anything. I was just going to say this, today, February 19th, is the day that Central Valley School District's annexation process is complete. And so we wanted to welcome Central Valley School District to the city of Liberty Lake with open arms and a new high school that they're looking to invest in our community. We do have a cake for some cupcakes and sweets for everybody. And so whatever the council and mayor want to say, and the school district, that's your call.
Come on up there, Ben. I want you to know two things. I wore my Y button. No Y button on. I got my Central Valley Bears tie on. So we're welcoming you to our fine city and appreciate your confidence in us to go to your new high school and your middle school and grade school and your K-2 schools. Thank you for everything.
Thank you very much. Council members, Mayor Peterson, Ms. Allen, just want to thank you from the Central Valley School District for opening your arms. When we approached an alternative site to what is now Ridgeline High School, there were many discussions about the city's willingness to look forward with us and look at ways that we could permit Ridgeline High School and beyond time to open in the fall of 2021. And from the Central Valley School District, every council member who voted to move this forward, who heard and took an interest in what we were doing for Ridgeline High School, for our community, for every one of those who spoke in favor of it and moved us forward, staff, we're just grateful to have partners who are willing to work with us for the betterment of our community. And we're excited. We're going to start turning ground out there in March 11th after our board acts on early site package. We're excited to begin work, and although we are already in the city of Liberty Lake, we're excited and proud to be building Ridgeline High School. We have members of our core team here tonight. I'd like to ask Jesse Hart if he would like to say a few words. He's our principal. Is that okay, Mayor?
Yeah, you got the next 20 minutes, my friend.
Everybody wants to be here that long, huh?
But I'd like to introduce, many of you already have met Jesse, but Jesse Hart is the principal of Ridgeline High School, and he has some of his core team members. We wanted to show that not just the administration, but others are very grateful for your work on our behalf. So, Jesse.
And thank you. I would like to introduce those folks that are here with me tonight. I'm going to introduce our other district folks to you guys. Noah J. Rowell, Deputy Superintendent, Matt Lambert in the back there, Secondary Director, and core team members that are with me tonight, Erica Maxwell, Dave Myers, and Krista Larson. Krista and Dave are teachers at Central Valley High School currently, and Erica is at Green Acres Middle School, so I did poach them away from their schools. This process, I'll just hold this. Last time I was here with Ben, gosh.
Planning Commission.
Yeah, that was Planning Commission. Sorry, same room, maybe it's a few different group. Anyways, we were trying to get this thing through, so I too am grateful, as is our core team, who are thrilled about the site, the location, the proximity, the access, and exposure that this will give our school within the community. The site further south is beautiful and picturesque, but you wouldn't even see the school. So it's nice to be in an area, so it feels like we're in the city and part of the community. So that's really great. We do have 13 teachers on the core team already hired as part of this planning process. And this planning started in April. I was hired in maybe March, and we started right away. This team came on board in April and May, officially our first meeting on May 17th. They're continuing their positions. I was previously the principal at Horizon Middle School and have left that position to pursue this full time. It's like starting your own city all over again. You guys can appreciate that. So 1,600 students, starting everything from the ground up. Culture, identity, programming, staffing, boundaries are coming up soon. And we'll do that work, turning our 2-district high school into 3. So really excited about getting our brand out there We're gonna be releasing that in the next several weeks, kind of our logo, mascot, those type of things. Start to promote our school in a positive way. Get the community, get our kids who are, our current 7th, 8th, 9th graders, 6th graders excited about coming to Ridgeline High School, and make it just part of the norm. CV High School, University High School, just part of our everyday norm. We're used to it, and when Ridgeline opens, it will become the same. Just part of who we are and what we do. So, looking forward to that. Thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate you having us here. Thank you to our core team members who came out. Hey, let me introduce one more core team member. Two more core team members. I thought you were saying, sorry. So, Abby Franson and Grady Emerson are part of my administrative team. Abby's an assistant principal for academics and curriculum, and Grady's going to take on athletics and activities. So, obviously, two very important components of the high school. A lot of buzz and conversation about athletics already, and but we can't forget about that academic side of what we do as well. Anyways, Abby is in professional development in our district. She's a leader in that and other programs and such. I can't even remember them all, Abby, sorry. And Grady's the assistant principal at Green Acres Middle School. Some of you probably have kids there. So, anyways, I appreciate that. Anybody else have any remarks?
I have a question on your core team. Are these guys still working in the school district, and this is kind of like a second job?
Yes, it is a second job. So the core team members, all 13 of them are Central Valley School District employees, and they're working in their current positions during the day and freelancing as Ridgeline High School in the evenings. We've been fortunate to have some release time as well, where they're pulled out of their classrooms. We're kind of on about one day a month schedule right now to do that work. A lot of electronic communication and after hours, so it's a huge commitment for them. A lot of people are very scared about the prospect of a building that isn't even there. What's going to happen? They're 3 years out from opening, so it's been a huge commitment on their part. The good and the bad that goes with it. You're really going to the new high school? You don't want to be here anymore, and you feel like you're abandoning those behind, but you're really not. They're just looking for forward opportunities ahead, and we're really, in the end, ultimately, it's going to just hopefully just pull us all closer as a 3-district high school community.
Now is Grady, he's a sports guy, right? So
He claims to be, yes.
He's a sports guy. So are you in charge of picking the mascot?
Yes, if you don't like it, he is.
Sure, we'll respond to that. Ben will leave my email and my phone number, I guess.
Well, I have several suggestions.
We took one of our release time days, and we spent a good part of the day going through mascots with our team, and people brought their ideas and gave presentations, and we had little pitches, and then within our team we started to narrow things down.
Was there room for another pitch, or?
No.
Anyway, well, the coolest thing for Liberty Lake is with the building of the K2 school and now the new high school, your child can enter kindergarten and graduate 12th grade within the city of Liberty Lake. That's cool. That is really
It's a
cool.
long way. Long way from where we started.
So, and Chihuahuas are always tougher than bears.
Grady, is there really any mascot other than the one that should be?
Well, I made my colors pretty clear in terms of what I would prefer, but we had a team decision.
I know Grady, and we both went to WSU, so Cougars is the choice, right?
No.
No, I'm saying.
No rumors. It's Huskies.
It'll be on the website tomorrow.
Where's Craig? Where's Craig first? There's Craig. Want to put that down? The Cougars.
So I have a question, okay? You can go to Liberty Lake Elementary. You can go to
Selkirk. Middle school.
Selkirk Middle School. Okay? Why did you pick now not to name the high schools after the areas?
I can answer that.
Ridgeline, come on, Liberty Lake High, that has a ring.
You know, one of the things that our board, that our board in the past, if you look at most of our schools are named after roads. Adams, Progress, Broadway, North Pines, South Pines, University, Green Acres. Some are named after areas, but we decided to split from that, and we really looked towards geographical pieces of that. So you had Selkirk and the Selkirk Mountains were at the base of the Selkirk Mountain Range. Liberty Creek, the Liberty Creek area. And then River Bend, of course, is right in the bend in the river. And then if you look at Ridgeline, the mountains around it is what brought that to the forefront.
Yeah, great, no. But thank you.
You're welcome. I can always count on you, Lou.
So we do have cupcakes if you want any, but before we serve cupcakes, we want you to show you what the city's flag looks like. So Anne,
Oh,
yeah, so it's a cupcake cake.
It's a cupcake cake, yes.
It's like- Yeah, well, that's our city flag. So, anyway, there's napkins here and cupcakes there. Help yourself, please.
Welcome aboard. So we're gonna take a 5-minute break for this. Chris is the only one missing.
Mayor, move to excuse.
Second.
Decided further discussion, I can call for Chris, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There you go, and the agenda is before you.
Mayor, move the agenda. Second.
Decided further discussion, I can call for Chris, aye.
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 Opposed? There you go. Citizen comments, how about that, huh?
We got Mark.
Yep. Positive, people. Trust me, it is very positive. Who's responsible for snow removal?
Jennifer?
I think we ought to give Jennifer a big round of applause. Snow removal in this city, especially for the month of February, because guess what? I heard on the news today, the average snowfall for February is 7 inches. As of yesterday, we're at 24 and more to come. Yep. I got to commend the city on how they've come through and cleaned up the streets. As a matter of fact, the timing of the plow coming down my street, I was still out there blowing my driveway and the berm was there and I wasn't back in the house yet. I was able to get the berm out of the way before I went in the house. You know, most of the time, I get in the house, take off my clothes and everything, and then here comes the blade. So I gotta go back out. Okay, the other thing I want to bring up, the last meeting I was at, not the last one, the time before, there was an event, kind of a rough event calendar for the summer, okay? I would like to see the Youth Commission's talent show put on that. If they're going to do it this year. Katie, remember we talked about that last year. It was just a great event that no one knew about. I mean, I think we could have had 5 times the people there if, you know, the people would have known about it. And there's just a couple suggestions I came up with. That's it.
Thank you, Mark. Other comments? Yeah.
I know I wasn't able to attend your last meeting here, but I just wanted to come and say thank you for the partnership again with the Splash, and we really appreciate it. look forward to working together again for another year. And this year's we're exciting. We're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary at the Splash this year. And so we're having some different things coming up this year, but yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for the partnership.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? I hear moving forward, so city and board and commission reports, so I see. Who wants to be first? I know our library works there.
There's no report though.
Okay. Parks and Arts?
No, planning commission.
Planning commission?
Neighbors, staff, council, and mayor. The Planning Commission has been meeting regularly. We've had a couple of special meetings. I'm happy to announce and thank 5 of you who are sitting there for encouraging me to continue with the Planning Commission, because it is doing, in my opinion, a much better job of representing the city and you in the decisions that are being made and the things that we're considering. And your sending things to us has been very helpful. The street tree ordinance is going to be discussed tonight, so I'm not going to say anything except please bear with us. It was very technical, but I think that it's a good workable start, and then you'll make the decisions. We did have a workshop on 5G small cell code amendments. When that comes our way, Verizon was the first in line to give us a presentation. It was an excellent presentation. We know that there are at least 2 other major carriers that will want to do the same thing, and we just found out, Lisa, I think that the FCC may have put a little bit of a braking on how quickly we want to implement 5G amendments. So we did a presentation on that. We will give you some of our recommendations that come out of that as well. We had the staff presentation of the development stats, and Barb did a great job like she did tonight here. It was very encouraging, the trends that we have. We are discussing and workshopping potential changes to the city development code, site design review process and procedures. You're going to be discussing that. Our goal is to make it come in line more with the comprehensive plan. I was here with all of you for that comprehensive plan development. I think you're going to see that it does jive and it does parallel. We'll clarify the process in 3 basic steps that Lisa has made very clear. She'll pound it into your heads like she did ours. Preliminary design review, site plan review, and approval and building plan review and permitting. Those 3 themes will follow through this entire recommendation. And then, as per your request, we did a first look at the food truck issue. It wasn't, I represented some of the things that were discussed back in 2016. There were some other, one particular planning commissioner who had been there during most of those discussions as well. You asked us to re-review it. We're going to take another look at it. I think that things have changed enough to where you should take another look at it, and we'll make good recommendations. If you have any questions or anything else that you want us to do, Member Phil Follier is our chair, and I think, can't remember who are. Charlie's our assistant now. Most everybody is showing up and doing a lot of work, and we're having some extra meetings, so let us know if there's anything you want.
Okay, thank you. So Parks and Arts?
Lena Schutz, Parks and Arts Commission. The first update is that we have adjusted our 2019 strategic plan to match the budget you guys gave us. So we've moved some things around, and now we have just the things that we're planning to do for this year, which includes utility box wraps, a mural in Pavilion Park, the story walk, and potentially goat statues. That's 2019. We'll also be adjusting our 5-year plan, moving stuff around, and updating that as well. Next thing is that we have had a lot of people in Liberty Lake come forward wanting to donate art to the city, which is a great problem to have. Recently, we've had someone come forth with some Leroy Neiman serigraph art. Very expensive, autographed, numbered editions. And I think we're just looking for maybe some input from the council on their ideas of, when we get these requests, where could we put it? we don't have a gallery space, but maybe we could come up with an idea where we could switch out some of this stuff, or what you guys' thoughts are on that.
Yeah, we had some discussion about it earlier.
Okay.
And some of the ideas that came out were maybe something here potentially, something
Yeah.
in the library, maybe including the schools as well.
Okay.
Beautiful art though.
Yeah, it's
Grateful that you were willing to donate it.
It's great. I think it would be really cool to be able to invite the community to come in and look at the different things that we've kind of inherited, but figuring out what that looks like, I guess we'll just have further discussions. The only other thing we're working on is we're still receiving art from our Call to Artists. The commission will be looking at all that artwork soon for our utility box program. Any questions?
Do you have any update of the last meeting I attended? You see you ran into a little bit of a challenge with Avista.
We are having a challenge with Avista. I don't have an update yet on what a solution is. We're still working on what we can possibly do, but we've run into some issues with Avista. Our traffic control boxes are fine, and we still have some more that we can cover, but electrical boxes are another problem here in the city.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
The guy that, just for your information, the guy that donated the art, Dick Canfield, is tied to the city to some extent in the beginning, because Canfield and Associates was our insurance carrier. Still is? Or they kind of
Different
say
name,
they- different name. But he was the founder of Canfield and Associates, and so we appreciate it. And he lives right behind you, Mike, right? And so we appreciate his donations, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, sewer, water, anything from the commissioners here? Don't see one. You want to talk about the fire district at all?
The only thing I would add is just to say thank you. We passed our levy last week at 74%, which we were very pleased with, and so we would thank everyone who voted. And thank you for the support of Liberty Lake and the partnership we have with you. We really appreciate that, so thank you.
Any other boards or commission? Not seeing any city council reports?
I'll throw a couple of really important Saturdays coming up. This coming Saturday, it's not too late to sponsor Chief some more for the Polar Plunge. I think you've got a website for that, right? So, the following Saturday, the 2nd, is the Kiwanis Father-Daughter Dance at the Park Hotel, the Riverview Park Hotel. And then on the Saturday following, that's the 9th, is the Central Valley Bear Booster Club's gala auction at the Centennial Hotel downtown. So great opportunity to get out there and visit and have social time with the friends in the community and support activities and important causes. So get out there.
Chief, do you want to give us, for those that don't know about it, a timeline of Saturday and how the events will lay out?
Sure. So Saturday is our plunge event, the Benefits Special Olympics Washington. The registration starts at 9 o'clock. The event is actually at the Villages Homeowners Association Beach, which is at the intersection of Moulter and Inlet. The awards ceremony will start at 11, and the first plunge will be at noon. And that'll be your team Copsicles will be the first to plunge as the highest fundraising team. And then also, if you'd like to, on Friday, the day before the team plunge event, there's 8 of us doing the super plunge, where we'll be jumping in Liberty Lake 24 times in 12 hours on Friday. So
That's just a warm-up?
that's the warm-up. Yeah. So again, money goes to Benefit Special Olympics Washington's, our regional athletes right here in the Spokane area.
And for the people that don't know, everybody involved with this, from the chief and his wife to everybody else, has put a lot of time and effort into preparing for this. Even getting the grounds prepared for it has been a lot of hard work on their part. They've put in a ton of time into this. So if you get a chance to get down there, I know it's going to be cold, but it's a great cause and a lot of great people involved to support. So if you can get down there, please do.
So the AWC nominating committee met Tuesday, the 12th. Everybody attended by phone this time because the young people were having some trouble with some snow. And so anyway, we held our meeting, and about the only thing of significance that came out of that particular meeting was that we restructured the leadership application forms for people who want to serve either in districts or on the AWC boards. So it would be interesting to see how that's received. We restructured it, removed a couple of questions, joined a couple of others, trying to make it coherent and flow. And that was about it that took place in that meeting. Thank you.
Steve, do you want to make a comment to the luncheon we went to where Tricia was recognized for 5 years involvement with,
Oh, with the, yeah.
Community trip reduction.
Yeah, we had the, community trip reduction.
CTR.
So, CTR. In fact, we had one of the major award winners was Comcast, where the city was really, is one of the employers. Tricia was recognized for 5 years of success in community trip reduction growth. So that was a very, I think we had, there was a couple other.
it was a well-attended event.
Yeah, a couple other people did well for our community, for our community trip reduction. Any other reports? Anybody go for it, Katie?
So Mayor, I'm going to start with Scott, who's going to pick up where he didn't get a chance to start with during the workshop. So Scott's going to give you an update on some projects, Harvard, Henry, and Carroll.
First thing I want to say is I thought that was a good call. Having CV and the cake and all that, so nice job there. So what I've done here is, I don't have a fancy presentation tonight, but what I did want to kind of do is get to the point where you guys know at least a little bit about all the projects and the stats of all the projects we have in the city. And not that you need to get into the weeds and know every detail, but at least if one of your neighbors asks you, hey, what's going on at the signal, you know, you can answer. So that's kind of my goal. So what you have here on this list I just handed out is a list of all the active projects that are either under design or under construction in some way, shape, or form. So you can see it's a pretty good list. We've got quite a bit going on this year. So to start with the Trailhead Master Plan, I think one of the things we talked about in the past is that we want to always make at least a baby step forward every time we have a meeting, right? And whatever that baby step is. So attached here, what you'll see is on the second sheet is basically what we think we heard last time we had a meeting. Some of the key items that were priorities for the council. And I would ask you to look through that in the coming days. And if there was something where we missed something or something was really important to you that you didn't think of at the moment, because I put you on the spot, if you could just get in touch with me and let me know what's going on, and we'll include it. Because I think the very next step that we're going to take here, the very next step we're going to take is a council priorities survey. So where we'll get all these items listed up in some reasonable format. We'll probably also have a funding section too, like, hey, which of these would you approve as far as funding, and would you be high priorities for funding? Because I think that's something we need to decide fairly early on, whether it's a small project or what we're thinking. So I anticipate that to be somewhere within a week to 10 days that we'll have that complete. And if you look at our fancy schedule, that's pretty close to where we said we would be, even though we don't have a group formed yet, an advisory group formed. The one thing I did want to say about the advisory group, one of the things that we did here was, hey, there was at least 3 council members that possibly want to be involved. And my thought process on that, and I want to put it to you guys tonight, is that, by the time you get 3 involved, then you're probably just going to recreate all that in front of the full council again, so it's probably a doubling of effort. So maybe that isn't the right way to go forward. And so we were thinking that, probably we should have the advisory committee that we meet on a more regular basis, and then we bring it to the council on a semi-regular basis, whether that's every other week or whatever. And certainly anybody who wants to stop by and weigh in or give us ideas, that would probably be, that'd be really welcome. Are there any thoughts on that? Does that seem like a reasonable path forward?
Well, just off the top of my head, I hear what you're saying, but I don't see how one intersects the other. If council people are on the committee and they're serving there, certainly they'll bring information back, but that doesn't preclude you from making it known to the whole body every couple of weeks or 10 days, however you decide to do that. So can you expound a little bit as to why that seems to negatively impact what you're doing?
Well, I just think, I know from in the past, having been on council, that we used to have committees, and I think Katie wants to weigh in on this, but we used to have committees, and that just seemed to be the trend, and I think it's one of the reasons you guys got away from doing that here, where you're actually doing workshops where the entire body is involved, as opposed to having individuals, groups of three that come back and report, and then we have to rediscuss it all, so. Katie, did you want to?
Yeah, I'll just weigh in. Projects like this, some of the times, we want input. Let me start with, we want input and ideas from the entire council. What's hard for us at a staff level is to have a committee meeting with some council members, and then the other council members that aren't there aren't as informed. And even though we bring back reports, they're not at the table, so to speak, engaged. We really think that our time can be better spent if we focus on the technical aspects of, and the steering committee, Scott can talk to you about the technical aspects of the steering committee. But what I was going to say is, our goal is to keep you all informed, and we would like to bring that back to the full council all together, so that we don't have some people further along or further informed than others. So this is kind of our thinking. We're thinking it's going to be more efficient on the staff side, and we also think it's going to be better for the entire council. So that was our thinking.
I'm very interested in ensuring efficiency, and if it's the observations of the staff to be more efficient in that mode, I'm a supporter of it.
I agree with that. If you guys think to operate more efficiently and bring back to everybody, great.
Okay, thank you.
And trust me, our goal is not to go off into one direction or another. It's to really do a lot of the behind-the-scene work and then bring it to the full council to weigh in on.
I am very supportive of that, but I would almost be more comfortable that this might be overkill, that every meeting we have an update. My concern is this: if we get subcommittees going and there's too long in between and we find out what's going on, it could go off the rails. And I think an example can be of Orchard Park. Is that by the time we find out some things are going on, we start asking questions. We're so far down the path, it's hard to make decisions.
I'd be more than willing to come at every council meeting and try and give you 5 minutes or less, just to give you an update on what we have going.
They're both on the committee, aren't you?
Or,
There was no committee formed, but we were.
They expressed an interest.
I have several of us that were interested in being on that.
I hear what you're saying, Councilman Kenny Lodge there. I don't feel like it necessarily needs to be every council meeting. I think there's, to the point of your Gantt chart that you put together, there should be certain KPI type moments that we need to hear an update. There might be a month in between things that we want to hear an update. So,
Oh, I agree.
if you want to just think through, I hate to waste even 5 minutes of every single council.
okay.
If you'll notice,
Well,
I did mention it could be overkill. But on these type of things, or something as big as that's going to be, I would rather have overkill than council members later on going, I didn't know. Okay? Let's don't fall into that pit.
Well, let's just say every time that you have a productive meeting that leads to an important infrastructure problem.
Absolutely.
Just let us know.
If I don't have anything big to report, we won't waste your time. If I have some milestone or significance, then we'll give you a 5-minute update.
Yeah, I feel that there was no meetings in between some of our meetings. If you did not have any meetings with groups or something like that, it's academic to give us a report.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Did you have Henry Road overpass in your discussion?
Yeah, I can just touch on it when you're done. If you want to touch on it.
Why don't you go ahead? Because there's thanks to the efforts of the mayor and staff and WashDOT, things have really progressed on Henry Road, so.
Things are going well. Maybe just a quick update. I know Jen is entrenched in getting the snow off the street. Scott has spent a lot of hours with DOT, our lobbyists, and other technical designers on the Harvard Road Bridge. So let me touch that one first. Harvard Road Bridge, as all of you know, is a new northbound lane and an extended westbound on-ramp. We're still very optimistic, but we won't know for sure until April. But today they had their 30% design review, and things are going well. The other thing I was going to mention also is Henry Road. So Henry Road is the connection between Country Vista on the south side and Mission on the north side. It's an important connection for our community, not only for people that live on either side of I-90, but also for our police department, our fire department, the school district, which all partnered, as you know, in advocating for these projects. Some of the things that I was going to mention is that WashDOT looks at Harvard, Henry, and Barker, which is the Valleys project, as kind of one project. And all of those projects are moving forward, and so we're pretty optimistic, but we won't know for sure for a while. I'll say on the design side, Henry Road, Harvard Road is progressing really well, and we're gonna do an overlay this year to smooth out the surface. That's not the widening project. The widening project will probably be, help me out, Scott, is it 2020?
They'll have the design done, 1st of November, we'll put it out to bid, and then we'll build it in 2020.
2020.
So
So
about 100%
that's
complete.
that project. Henry Road, by the time we have to acquire the right-of-way, do the design, do environmental, there's a whole host of preliminary projects, or preliminary steps that you have to do. But once we get the green light in April, we've talked to DOT about pushing the go button early, and that Scott will have a very full plate, and I will also, I'm just working with right-of-way acquisition, alignments, design, because we don't even have a design consultant at this time. So all that is moving along pretty well. Anything on this?
No, I think just that on the overlay, because we won't know on the funding until April, and because the DOT changed the type of deck, they don't want an asphalt deck anymore, they want a concrete deck. The overlay project that we had aligned with TIB, it might go away. We have to spend that money by the 1st of June. So I'm meeting with Gloria Bennett from TIB on Thursday, and we're gonna try and hash through the details of how that works. But bottom line, with the different type of overlay on the bridge, there's a certain type of phasing you have to do, and it doesn't work if we have asphalt on there. So there's some moving parts there we have to deal with on a technical basis. Moving on to Orchard, any questions on any of that? That's a lot of information in a short period of time. Orchard Park, we're working with the health district just to get approval on the splash pads. We had a meeting with them last week. They came out with a laundry list of about 15 items about 3 weeks ago that we addressed, and we're down to 1 item, so that's good news.
Water?
Yeah, whether we can turn the water on, that's the one thing. So the other thing is that we've resurrected the efforts to separate out the pavilion. We had that as part of the Orchard Park project originally. We have funding for it in the capital improvement program this year. But the design, so what we're just doing is repurposing the documents just to be a standalone package so it can go out just for building guys and not as to a landscaper to subcontract to a building guy. So that's moving along. I'm sure everybody wants to know what's going on with the signal at Signal and Appleway. And yes.
One thing on Orchard Park.
Yes.
It's a really minor thing, but I've noticed with the lighting that's gone up, the light at, and this is a really small detail, I was thinking whoever's kind of watching over the project, the light, there's a light on the corner of Harvard Parkway in Indiana, and it's kind of on the corner, and it's almost blinding in the road. I wonder if they put the wrong side, like the wrong width of bulb in there, or I can't imagine the intent of having it spread.
We'll check that out. Typically they're shielded so that you shouldn't get any blinding light, so we'll take a look at that. I'll have to swing by.
Crazy, it just seems like every time I drive by there.
I think the snow's partially reflecting it,
Is
it's
it?
part of the problem, so I'm imagining it won't be near as bad as when that melts.
Yeah, we'll do a drive-by. Yeah, we get complaints about lights for different parts of the city all the time, so we try and address them all. Hurrying up down the list here, so the pavilion, we got that going. The signal, we're just basically waiting, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, we're just waiting for the stop bar. You can't turn a signal on until you have a stop bar, so that's all there is to that.
So in regards to that signal,
Yes.
I brought up a question at the last city council meeting. When they design something like that, specifically to where the box is placed, do we have any ability to have input on that? Is it thought through from a traffic standpoint, visibility standpoint? Was there an ability to move it 2 feet back or a foot back? I'd like to know a little bit more about that, because the issue that comes into play that I've heard a lot so far is that if somebody is going to be taking a right-hand turn off the signal onto Appleway, and they have a red light that they're staring at, and they're looking to the left to see if they're clear, and I know that there was discussion about putting no right turn, which I don't think is the best solution on red, but it creates a block of visibility for cars coming. And I've had a lot of police officers even raise concerns about the lack of visibility from that distance.
Yeah, we absolutely. We do have input on that. I don't know why. For some reason, when they designed that, they never sent it to the county, and the county never did a review. So there's The county did a lot of rework as far as the actual wiring of the box. I've contacted Colvico, who's the prime contractor on that job, about moving the box back. And if we can get it done within contingency, we're going to move that box back. There's also some signal heads that need to be re-examined. And so learning the lesson going forward, we're preparing the bid documents for Madsen right now. And we did send those to the county for review, and we are looking at the site distance on that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think we talked to, the chief went by there, and we all looked at it together, and we can't leave it.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's a great lesson moving forward, so
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys are keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. The signal at Madsen and Appleway, like I said, we're in final design. We should go out to bid within 10 days on that. Trailhead irrigation, you guys approved the greens watering, so we'll be issuing what am I trying to say, the practice green watering last meeting, so we'll be going out to change order on that. Trailhead pump, good news on that. Looks like the pump is ahead of schedule. Should be here within about 2 weeks or sooner. There was a point where the geoengineers had recommended that we do some cleaning of the screens and all that, but it's prohibitive. It doesn't make sense. It's too expensive and it's too high potential to damage it, so we're not going to do it. So as soon as that pump comes in, we're ready to go forward. Northfield, we got preliminary plans. We met with Parametrics a week or so ago, and it's what they're going to do around the restroom there. They're going to have some stamped concrete, and it's going to be kind of a nice little architectural feature.
So that is in front of the doors?
It'll be right in front of the doors, and it'll go all the way out to the
Which is
edge.
the only way you can go there anyway.
Yeah. So it's just going to be a little architectural feature right there at the restroom, and then the rest of it, I think we're adding 31 stalls is what the final is. So we'll have almost 100 stalls there when we're done, parking stalls. We did get with Jen's crew and who are actually at those events all the time and reviewed it with him as well. And I think sounds like we're on the right track there.
What do you see a time frame on that? I know what's the slow.
Yeah, I think.
We get Jenny, but that's still a.
Well, we're thinking we want to wait until the baseball's over, which is somewhere in the middle of July. I think the baseball's over.
Okay,
So we're probably looking at we'll bid it, but we'll try and have the construction happen after that, which would be first August.
Yeah,
or
you just
so.
have the parking lot and the trail done at the same time.
Yeah, we'd have the parking lot and the trail done at the same time. So, Public Works Yard, we finalized the grading plan. We did the SEPA's complete, thanks to Lisa, and we're heading towards a grading permit, which we should have within a week, I think. So we're making progress on that, and so basically as soon as they're done snow plowing, they're going to head over there and start doing site work. On top of that, we're doing quite a few right-of-way permit reviews, and then we did finish up the civil site plan review for the high school on Friday, so that's they're approved to go on their March 8th start date. So, any questions? Okay, thanks.
That's great, thank you.
RJ's going to give us an update on the job description study and also the salary commission.
So last council meeting, I mentioned that we're looking at a job description and compensation study for our city employees. We want to go out, since we have an opportunity because of the increase in minimum wage this year and looking at everything comprehensively, we have this opportunity to hire a firm to actually do that instead of having myself do the study, having kind of more of an objective look and really analyzing the fair market value. We have a citizen, Liberty Lake, that can help us facilitate that along to test that data as well. So we'll be looking to go out with that RFP here probably in the next week or so, and something that will come back to council for approval probably sometime in early April.
Really just, I don't think I said it strong enough last time, but I want to applaud you guys for reaching outside to expert advice. I think that's a great leverage point. I think we should continue to look at more of those. So this is one great example, I think, of seeking expert advice outside of what we can do. So thank you for doing that.
I agree.
The other update I have is on the salary commission. So they have met, I believe, 3 times now. So they were really working hard, getting up to speed, getting information. We have been having good meetings with them. One thing I want to let you know is that they are ready to send to council a questionnaire, and we should have the questionnaire out to council by the end of this week, looking at back from you for March 8th. They would also like to interview each of the elected officials, and so we're trying to work on the logistics of how that will work, but that'll happen somewhere between March 18th and the 29th, and it'll be about a half an hour interview. So look for the questionnaire, and we'll want to get that back in a timely manner, March 8th, and then trying to schedule an interview for later in March. So their next meeting is on March 14th, and at that meeting we're hoping to have a lot of data, market value data for them to sort through. So that's all I have.
Can you explain to me why we have to, I understand the questionnaire, why do we have to follow that up with an in-person interview?
I think it's just for them to, from what them discussion is really to ask each individual council member for their own view on their role and what they understand the roles are, just for a little bit more background information.
Okay, moving along, we had an opportunity to meet with a local firm that focuses on smart cities. And it was kind of interesting. I went there wanting to learn something, but what I want to share with you is there are these technological devices that you can put onto your street signals, light signals, those that gather data, how many cars, how fast are the cars going, GIS, a whole array of information. So I just want to let you know, one is I was interested in learning more, but the other thing is that if there is a entry place into the market where we could do something, we might consider that for the next year's budget. The devices aren't all that expensive, and I know one of the things that Scott and I were talking about is on Country Vista, north of Mission, midway between Appleway and Mission, putting a crosswalk, and you can put a device on it, and it actually counts the cars and how fast the cars are going. So it's kind of, the neighbors think, well, there's 1,000 cars and they're going 50 miles an hour. Well, actually we'll have good data that actually there are not that many cars, and actually we have better data on how fast they're going. So just wanted to mention that. And then moving along, there's an item on the agenda related to Country Vista streetlights, and I'll be very quick on this. In the mid-1990s, when Country Vista was built from Liberty Lake Road heading west towards Barker, the developer, and this was in the county at the time, the developer built the road and put in all the improvements. In the course of doing that, over the last 20 plus years, they've paid the light bill on all the lights heading out Country Vista. And maybe that was the county's way, but in Liberty Lake, we, the city, pay for, manage, and make sure that all of the lights on our arterials like Appleway, Mission, Harvard, Liberty Lake Road are all our street lights, so that if they get hit, they get fixed, so on and so forth. So about a year ago, the developer who has been paying the light bill asked if we would be interested in taking over their inventory of street lights. So thanks to Lisa and Scott, they did a complete inventory of those lights, they GIS'd them, they did a complete analysis, and we're recommending tonight that you approve resolution 19-253, which would transfer the ownership of those lights along Country Vista to the city. The other thing I was going to add is over the course of time, I know Chief Asmus has mentioned sometimes when a light gets hit or is burned out, it stays that way for a long period of time because there's someone else who's managing it, when really we need to get out there and get that light fixed. So with that, if there's any questions, I can take it from there.
Have those been converted to LED?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
We recognize LED conversion as a strong advantage for power consumption.
Absolutely. We will definitely look into that. We did have a solid estimate for that. And if I can,
Please.
If I can just make a minor correction, the lights are actually owned by Vista, but the city would pay the utility bills on it. And so we did have good figures on that. It's a flat fee per month per light, and it was money that was included in the budget.
It's approximately $14,000 a year is approximately the.
It's actually, it's more like 11,000.
11, okay.
And we had actually included, I believe, 15,000 in the budget based upon our early estimates. There were more lights that were indicated in our early discussions with the developer than actually were on our corridor. There were some lights that were on some private streets and whatnot, and like what the city would pay for those.
And that figure is just for those lights?
Per year, yes, per year. Is there, I believe there's 50, hold on a second, I believe there's 58 lights. There's 58 lights between, that basically go from North Liberty Lake Road out Country Vista within the city limits, so.
Each light costs you, what, $20 a month or something like that?
So for the total for 58, it's a little bit more than that, but we've got 58 lights. The monthly cost is $1,065 approximately. Annual is $12,800. As I said, we could put a little over $15,000 in the budget last year, and it was admitted in there as we knew this was coming down the pipe, so to speak, but we hadn't worked out all the details yet.
Question?
About $18 and change.
I think Councilman Dunn brings up a very good question, which you can check on if they're LED or not, because I'm sure right now, if they're not, that roughly 1,000 a month is based on non-LED. So if they can be converted, it'd be interesting to see what that cost would be. Good idea, Ed.
Okay, and then I think the last thing on my report, let's see, is just some dates to remember. February 20th is the Spokane County meeting on growth management for elected officials. It's from 9 to 11, and it's the Spokane Regional Health Building. If you'd like to go, could you please contact Lisa? She might want to provide you some information about what we would want you to know if you were to attend that meeting, to give you a little background of what's being discussed. And then finally, we've mentioned the polar plunge again, so one last time, February 23rd. I heard there's 18 inches of ice, and they're using a chainsaw to cut out the dunking area.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask a question. I go back to the on Scott's, when you referred to the repaving of the widening of the overpass. I know last year we had the subject about, we didn't really have a priority of our streets in town, of a priority when they should be redone. And I know that that was going to be done this year, so I assume that's going to be coming down by as time goes on.
We do. So we do have a list of, and I'm going to give you a very high-level feedback. So we do have a list of the condition of our roads, and we have a plan on when to do them. What we are doing this year, though, Councilmember Kennedy, is we're not going to do an overlay other than on the bridge using TIB funds. We needed to rebuild our funds, our utility tax funds. Am I saying that correctly, RJ? So RJ asked if we could pause another overlay project in this 2019, so there will not be an overlay project this year. Last year, we did the heights.
The heights. I know part of the discussion was of our roads as a priority list of where they are and where we anticipate them. And one that you brought up on several occasions is over close to you guys, where quite a few of the mobile homes are. Those streets there, it's just not a matter of repaving that. There's some structure has to be done.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at it. We have to look and see what's the best maintenance that needs to be done on those streets. The challenge is, I'll just be honest with you, those streets over there, they don't have curb and gutter, there's no sidewalk. And so we have to look at the crowns and the edges and all that. But that is the area, if we were to bite off the next neighborhood to do, that would be the neighborhood.
But that is something that this year we'll be working on. Priority list.
Correct, but we will not be doing an overlay project.
Yeah, thank you.
I just have one comment. Scott, in your presentation, and I'm not sure who should be working on this, whether it should be council or one of the commissions, but years ago, and early in my career, we lived a couple of years in Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, which is just south of downtown Pittsburgh. And in those communities around that area, they all have different kinds of winter features. And since winter is back in Liberty Lake, you know, I'd like for us to consider some kind of a winter feature, either at Trailhead or one of the other parks, like outside skating rink, or like they have in downtown Spokane, you know, the ribbon rink thing. I think there are plenty of opportunities, and we have, you know, parks and we have Trailhead. And I'd like for us to consider that, you know, for the future. I can recall being in an outside skating rink there, where it was two-story and there was a glass so we could watch the people at this outside rink. And the community also had an inside hockey rink that seated about, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 people. So the community wasn't much terribly larger than Liberty Lake. So I'd just like for us to be thinking about that as we think about what we're going to do with the property at Trailhead and what are some of the other things we can do at our other parks. Thank you.
Snow sculpting contest, Bob, what do you think?
I know there's a lot of good sledding hills and cross-country snow skiers. There's a lot of, saw a lot of people out there enjoying the slopes in our town.
Well, we don't have many things going on. I don't think at Trailhead or at Town Square. What goes on at Town Square in the winter? So there are a lot of opportunities. I think we should consider those. Thank you.
Anything else, Kate? No? So where's the, city street ordinance?
Mayor, council members, thank you. As you may recall, back last summer, a letter went out from to Meadowwood homeowners, and it raised a little bit of consternation about street trees. And when we tried to help them, it got a little more complicated. And as we dug into the ordinance, we found that we had street trees in 3 different areas of our code, and there was no consistency between those 3 areas, among other things. We also found that in some cases it was very prescriptive and overbearing. In other cases, it was problematic from not providing us with enough guidance. And so we took a look at our street tree ordinance, and with the intent to simplify and clarify where it was necessary, to eliminate conflicting requirements and create consistency, and to consolidate where it was appropriate. We also looked to provide better guidance and more specific standards that would protect the investment in our green infrastructure, the trees in the long haul, but also to protect the investment in the hardscapes, the sidewalks and utilities, etc. And so the code involves changes to city code and river district SAP as it relates to definitions of street trees. And we actually came up with a new definition because not in the street tree ordinance in Chapter 8 nor in Chapter 1 did we have a very good definition in it. So we have refined the definition. We also looked at the street tree requirements in our development code, development standards, section 103C-4. Also, we looked at general outdoor maintenance requirements in our city code and river district SAP as it related to it's section 1031-3. There's some specific paragraphs that relate to street trees, sidewalks, streets, etc., and what you have to maintain. We also looked at City Code 8.6, which is not in the development code. It's in our codified code, and that was the original street tree ordinance that was required for us to gain our Tree City USA status. And there were some things in there that were that were concerning, that were fairly prescriptive, that were non-enforceable. There were also most of the sections were also addressed in the development code or in engineering design standards, and there were a lot of conflicts there. The one section that was in there that was worthy of moving into the development code and into engineering design standards had to do with maintenance of trees. And so we're proposing that this particular section be repealed because it's just redundant with other areas. Either it's in development code, it's in the maintenance section, or it's in our engineering design standards. And we wanted to create consistency between those three sections. And lastly, the engineering design standards section 3.3 specifically has several paragraphs that are specifically related to existing or new street trees. And again, inconsistencies, that was adopted by City Ordinance 241 when you adopted the development code. You also adopted these engineering standards. Those standards were actually not consistent. In some cases, they were more specific. In other cases, they were not consistent or less specific than what we had in other sections. So our intent was to get these all in alignment and really to clean it up and really come up with a better code. So how did we approach it? Well, first of all, we put together an ordinance review team that included Jen Cam, Joyce Carey, Scott Bernard, our city engineer, Barbara Barker, who's planning and engineering associate, Stephen Williams on our street crew. We also engaged Ben Thompson, who's the urban forestry specialist with DNR, and he's the guy who basically blesses us as Tree City USA. Also, Martin Bixby, who is our certified arborist with Greenleaf that we use. And so we got a lot of input from all these folks, and we then went on to, we also had a lot of comments, or not a lot of comments, we had specific comments from Avista, from Jim Frank with Greenstone, from Kevin Schneidmiller with Greenstone, and Mike Terrell, who is Greenstone's landscaper. And we actually used these comments to refine the code as we went through the hearing process. From a procedural overview standpoint, we had multiple planning commission workshops. We also workshopped it with the Parks and Arts Commission, who is our tree commission, as it were. And they were more than happy to. They liked the approach. They liked the overall intent of what we were trying to do, and felt that the planning commission was well suited to do the heavy lifting on this one. We did also do our SEPA review, and we actually had a planning commission hearing on January 9th. Because of comments that we got late in the process from Greenstone and from Joe Frank and from Mike Terrell, they actually continued the hearing to January 23rd so that we could work through those. And we did have some collaborative work sessions with Kevin Schneidmiller and Mike Terrell, and when we came back and with some revisions to the proposed ordinance, Greenstone was fully supportive of the revisions. So what you have before you in your packets, you do have the Planning Commission's recommendations. So you have the findings, conclusions, and recommendations. You also have a copy of the amendments as proposed with Planning Commission's changes to it. So you do have a copy of the ordinance. Again, we have submitted our notice to Commerce, and basically, without going into, there's a lot of detail in this, and we can approach that a couple different ways. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the ordinance. I feel like the Planning Commission did some real heavy lifting, and our review team did some real heavy lifting and multiple iterations of it. I know some of you have more specific knowledge than others on trees and the street trees and whatnot, and what constitutes a good ordinance. One of the things that I wanted to ask is, first of all, from a general policy, are we heading in the right direction with this?
Specific to the engineering design code, I've kind of skimmed through it, so I haven't had a chance to dive into it fully and really study it. Was there discussion specific to the installation of the trees? You know, trees make our city beautiful, in theory, and great conceptually, but they weren't fully thought through as the city has developed. And typically, in speaking with somebody that has a lot more knowledge than I do about trees, there's a process when you plant a tree that you can, around the bed, Jane, you can clarify this for me, because you know better than I do. When you're installing a tree, you can put a perimeter, I think it's 2 feet down or 3 feet down, at the base of the tree. So it forces, it's a device that forces the roots to go down rather than out.
So we had looked at requiring the tree barrier, the root barrier, and that's what you're talking about is the root barrier. We talked about that. Now that one of the things we got a fair bit of pushback from Greenstone as to the cost and the complexity of doing that because of the way infrastructure goes in, the fact that the trees don't usually get planted until later when the irrigation systems go in. And as we did a deeper dive into the research and talking to practitioners, etc., one of the things we found is that the tree barriers do have some mixed reviews, and they can be costly. We have it included as an option, but the first option, one of the things that we heard from all of the practitioners, that number one, even more important than the root barrier, is getting water to the roots and having deep root irrigation. So we made that as the number one. We did provide the root barrier as an alternative, particularly, and where we think it has the most applicability is when somebody is actually proposing to replace an existing street tree, where it may be less practical to install a deep root irrigation system, where that may be an appropriate alternative. So there was actually a fair bit of conversation, and the original ordinance went through, was proposed with the root barrier as a requirement, and that was one of the things that was changed over time.
Yeah, 'cause my concern is if we don't do something along those lines, we're going to continue to see sidewalks being ripped up and causing tripping hazards, and then it goes upon the owner of that home to replace it. And as you drive down, even in my neighborhood, I mean, almost every single house, you can see the sidewalks doing this right by where the trees are. And I don't want to see us as a city, as we expand to 18,000 plus, that we continue to see this problem.
One of the things that I will say, though, and Ormond has come up as the poster child for why we needed to do this. But the reality is the planting strip is too narrow, and the trees that were selected for that area are inappropriately sized. So one of the other things that we did, you'll see that we actually widened the planting strip requirement, and we had support both of the development community as well as the practitioners to say that number one, and number two, to be very specific about the width when you're doing a larger tree. And I think that finally that the importance, there's an importance to having, and this was probably the thing that brought it to our attention first, was the fact that we had different approved tree lists in our brochure, in the development code, in the tree ordinance in 8.6, and some of them were really not, they were trees that we included on our not recommended list. They were not really desirable street trees. One of the things that we've gotten, we gave some examples of approved street trees. We gave a strong statement about the characteristics of it, and we really need to look at it. One of the things that we don't want to have a black and white list, because cultivars change over time, and the challenges with certain cultivars change over time as we have different infestations, this, that, and the other, that could affect the appropriateness of that tree. But we did give some examples, and we did provide, we're not being prescriptive in that. We're saying these are recommended. Other cultivars can be proposed and will be considered based upon the characteristics that we've described. but we did also add that also not recommended list. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Reviewing this, and maybe I missed it, but I don't see any timeline for violations of the ordinance and replacement. From a practical point of view, I've been attending the Meadowwood HOA meetings for the past 3 years and complaining about the dead trees on Mission Avenue and why they haven't been replaced. They quickly raised my dues 18% last year. For the past 3 years, they haven't replaced those trees. It just seems to me, and I've raised a question here at city council meetings about the dead trees not being replaced. And it seems to me that there should be some timeline in the ordinance where property owners, whether it's the HOA or individual property owners, have a certain amount of time to replace dead trees or correct violations of the ordinance.
So what are
Was
we?
that discussed by anybody at the planning commission?
It was not, and so again, the timelines, really, we provide those timelines when we do code enforcement. Now, I want to remind you that we only do code enforcement in response to complaints, so it's complaint-driven code enforcement. And again, so we're not proactively going out and assessing. If we get a complaint, we do address it. We give them notification, we give them timeline. We do have the ability to go in and replace that and charge it to the homeowner. That's an act of last resort. But one of the challenges in putting timelines in have to do with the appropriate seasons to actually be planting. And so you want to also have enough leeway that you're not telling somebody that they need to be doing something in a season that's not really appropriate. You don't want somebody to plant a tree in the middle of the...
The trees on Mission have been dead for 3 years, and they haven't been replaced yet.
So let me add, I walked that route, and I know Jackie's mentioned it to me, and I've seen those dead trees. There's a and Jen can help me out here, but there's a combination of watering, maintenance, and those trees that didn't work well at all. And I know they were dying or in the process of getting to be dead over the last couple of years. They're coming down now. We took out our so some of those trees along there are ours. Some of them belong to the HOA, one HOA. Some of them belong to a different HOA. So there's a lot of different ownerships. The irrigation systems are 20 years old. Some of them don't work well, and they're not ours. But I mean, I've walked down there and seen trees just sitting in standing water. To make a long story short, there's a plan to get those fixed, and the HOA is participating in those replacements, as are we, because some of those trees are actually ours. So it basically goes from Country Vista all the way down to almost Moulter. I think some of those came out recently. But you're right, how long do we wait for a tree to die before we follow up? And I want to tell you though, that we received complaints from people who have a neighbor who has a dead tree, and we have to contact the owner, tell them to replace it, give them enough time to do it, wait for the right planting season and all that. So, and sometimes when there's a street tree, there's irrigation modifications that have to be made. But again, we try to do it, but the ordinance isn't going to address the time frame.
Right, the ordinance is not going to address the time frame, but we do, when we do active code enforcement, we actually provide people with timelines as to when they need to act and whatnot. And by not having them in the code, it allows us to be a little more sensitive to the seasonal issues, etc. Yes, sir.
Is there anything in the...
I have no fault whatsoever with your engineering and what you propose in the ordinance and resolutions, but I think in theory, I got a problem with unfunded mandates, whether it's the state doing it to the cities or the federal government doing it to the state. You got it, and then you got to figure out how to pay for it, okay? And I kind of get the same feeling when a tree gets planted that the homeowner didn't ask for. It's been descriptive, told where it can be planted, how, by professionals. And then, if something goes wrong with the trees, everybody says, well, that's your problem. Okay? You need to replace it. And if it breaks up the sidewalk, which was part of the planning, okay, because they knew what kind of tree they were planting, that too becomes the homeowner's problem. And, you know, one of the things you did in this particular rewrite was that you increased the width of the planting row. Great, but that's not going to help 90% of our city that's already restricted, okay, to the smaller planting rows. So, wrong timing right now, and I understand that. At some point, we really need to think about that, okay? How is this helping our residents by putting this mandate on them that they didn't ask for to begin with, okay? And then giving them long-term care and control of custody of it and maintenance. You know, so, anyway, that's more to the council than anyone else, but at some point I would like to.
Sorry to add, you know, that I don't know if this works. I've had the same thought feeling for years around, especially all the Greenstone neighborhood, because I've down a lot of trees and seen them improperly planted and die, and then we've seen that. I appreciate a lot of what this is doing, is probably preventing that. Is it even possible for the city to put something that says 2 years after that tree was planted, it's on whoever built the home? I know that doesn't help somebody that just moved into the house that was 10 years old, but I don't even know that's a possibility or has ever been done. So.
Well, my concern would be that it would be a difficult to enforce thing because was it properly maintained? Was it properly watered? Was it properly cared for? Was it properly pruned? Was it anything? And my concern with that is that it would be super challenging to actually implement and enforce.
That's, I don't have any solutions to it. I was wondering. Do you know if we can come up with something?
Lisa, I'm curious, when Planning Commission, Parks and Art was addressing this, did they address anything that I refer to as messy trees? And I'll use for example in Rocky Hill. When I was campaigning over there, the number one thing I got from individuals, were the fake cherry trees or whatever the case may be, because they're very prolific. They fall on the concrete, they fall on the cars. People were complaining because they step on them and then they bring them into their carpet. I mean, it got to the point I thought, maybe that's not a place to campaign.
You will see that fruit trees are not recommended are on the not recommended list.
So will it be, if I could, another question, will it be as if those happen to die, or they go to replace them, they cannot be replaced with the same type of a tree?
So that's a good question, and so the homeowner and the homeowners association can make a case for with trees that are too large to fit in the planting strip. I think that absolutely we should not consider allowing them to replant. But again, if a case is made that for continuity of design in the neighborhood, it should be this type of tree, you know, it won't be black and white. And we intentionally weren't black and white in this. We provided ourselves with standards so that we could exercise some professional judgment in those types of situations.
I'm sure I'm not the only council member or individuals in this room that's heard about some of those trees in Rocky Hill. They're nasty.
Am I sharing your concern and your thoughts? Jen, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but with the deep irrigation concept and the new tree selection, do you feel that that is an adequate solution for the new development areas?
Yes.
So we don't run into those sidewalks being lifted?
So a few thoughts on this. We wanted to provide enough flexibility and not have so much black and white that we couldn't offer suggestions of different varieties for replanting, smaller varieties. We do recommend like-in-kind varieties, but that means if someone has a gigantic full-size sycamore tree, we would be more than willing to help them select and choose a smaller, similar variety that would be more compatible to the planting area, the planting strip. fruiting trees. That is one that we had a handful that said, no, absolutely not, that we will not allow that as a street tree. But again, every tree is going to have a mess in some fashion, whether it's aphids, whether it's insects, whether it's disease, whether it's crab apples. So there is no perfect tree. We try to take the worst offenders and eliminate them from the list. The situation between root barriers and deep watering, we had a lot of in-depth discussion on that, and root barriers are not a perfect solution. Deep watering is truly the ultimate solution, but not everybody can do that. So we are, once this comes through, going to be fabricating a handout for the citizens so that if they do have to replant a tree, they have some instruction on how to care for that tree. Deep watering is critical to get those roots down. That's really the big way to get those root systems to go down. Nothing is a sure thing though, 110%. But with all of these things put together, that is the solution that we have.
Is there any timeline also for tree maintenance? I know in some neighborhoods it's an issue where the larger, more mature trees hang over the sidewalks and there's no clearance for people to walk on the sidewalks, or they're extending out into the street so you can't park cars under the trees. If there's no timeline for that either, shouldn't there be? Shouldn't there be some methodology established in order to make sure that people trim the trees that are obstructing the sidewalk and the street?
If it's a public safety hazard, we provide a much shorter timeline for correcting it. We just had a code enforcement issue come out on a site triangle issue where the trees are actually in the public right-of-way and it's causing a site view issue for our street plows. Our solution was it's in the public right-of-way. We sent the letter saying we're going to contract with Greenleaf to remove these, and the letter was to notify the property owners that we were doing that because these street trees, and we explained, of course, how they were impacting the safety of the motoring public and our plow drivers, but at the end of the day, it was something that we had to do. So obviously, when we look at code enforcement, again, we have timelines that we put into the enforcement letters, and if it is, and we do reserve the right, if it's a public safety hazard, for us as a city to go in and just take care of it.
I'd like to add something too along those lines, Councilmember Moore. So we do have a code enforcement officer. He sends out lots of letters about trim your tree, and then there has to be, I think it's 13 feet over the street and 8 feet over the sidewalk. And even the HOAs, we send them out. He gets calls, he sends out letters, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of blocks that they go out there and they prune their trees. And they take turns hauling the debris to the garbage, or to the dump, excuse me. But there is a lot of tree trimming going on. And I don't know if all of them are driven by our code enforcement letters or not. I don't keep a track of all of them. But if there is one that is too low and you can't park under or walk under it, they do get letters. And I'm impressed with the number of people that do step up and trim them.
Question. Is it required that we need to get city permission when we go to trim trees or top them?
I'm sorry?
Is it a requirement we need to get approval of the city when we go to trim trees?
There is not a requirement. You need to, if you are within the right-of-way, you need to get a right-of-way permit if there's a chance that the limbs are going to fall into the public right-of-way, etc.
Oh, good, so those three trees we did 3 weeks ago, I don't have to worry about them. Thank you.
I've got more comments by the way, thank you.
Sure.
So I love where you guys are taking this on, that you've made it more flexible and took off the entire street tree list. One concern I had with that was new species with similar characteristics on the same block for design continuity. I wonder if that's too loose. I'm just thinking similar characteristics, and we have like, we got a whole row of ash trees that we're gonna put a onboard maple right in the middle of it. Maybe that's okay, that starts to be kind of goofy. I'm just wondering what you found that.
Can you give me a page number on that,
That was
please?
on page A2.
Thank you. It's certainly something that is certainly something that could be addressed. And one of the things that I wanted to suggest to all of you is that timeline, and if I may for just a second. So the timeline is that the soonest we could do a hearing on this is March 19th. We certainly could do another workshop if you have some specific recommendations. The other thing is that I can get with you all one-on-one to get comments and to dive into the technical. There's a lot. This is, I don't know, 20-some pages, 17 pages of code amendments, and it may be more fruitful, excuse the pun, to get your individual comments and to maybe to come up with an errata sheet for that, for the public hearing of potential changes.
All my feedback is very technical. It's all of this, but maybe that would be conducive to the timing that these things put together.
So this is on this is basically on the timeline now. 60-day comment.
Well, it went to Commerce for their 60-day comment period. The council can't act on it, so until 60 days have passed. It went to them January 25th. So if after the second read, if you act on the second read, you're fine on that. It can be a longer time frame. I'm not suggesting that we have to move it that quickly. And if you feel like we need more time to work through it, we absolutely can. We want to get this right. One of the thoughts that we had, and one of the reasons why Planning Commission chose to do a special meeting to continue the hearing, was because we're hoping that we have this in place in time to revamp our street tree and sidewalk pamphlet in time for the spring planting season.
What is your, just to cut to the chase for a minute, this is basically a workshop tonight.
This is a workshop tonight. First dip in the water.
First read would be no sooner than the 6th, but maybe like the 19th of March.
So the hearing would be the 19th of March, and so with the first read, so the second read could be the first meeting in April.
So somewhere around mid-April, we're going to try to get this thing taken care of.
Yeah, we'd like to have. I think a good goal is to have our new tree brochure out for Arbor Day. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully one last question. I noticed you had with the Planning Commission held several workshops. Parks and Art Commission held one workshop, and you have a recommendation that Planning Commission recommends moving forward in this. I assume by the time it comes back to us again, we'll have a recommendation from Parks and Art.
Parks and Art Commission recommended that the Planning Commission make the recommendation.
But that's not in here. And they are part of the collaborative effort, correct?
They are. We did present to them on a high level, and what they felt was that they had too much important work to do on the arts and events side of things, and that it was in good hands with the Planning Commission. So that was
I would like to see that recommendation in writing, because we've instilled that responsibility to them. I want them to be involved.
Thank you. We'll do that. Yes.
So I guess you've heard a number of things tonight. We talked a little bit about code enforcement. We talked about dead trees and notifications. We talked about some of those things. And so I'm going to try to make sure some of that information or referral stuff goes back into this your final ordinance, or
I would
receive the code enforcement, or
what I'd like to do is maybe do a separate memo that I share with you, our code enforcement approach. Again, one size does not fit all in code enforcement, and so it's concerning to try and.
But I guess my point is that in this, okay, this talks about plantings and watering and all the other stuff and size and blah, blah, blah. When you can cut one down or not cut one down, I guess, I mean, that was, we force them in a site plan and put in the tree, and we don't have anything after that, to take care of the tree. And so, I guess from my perspective, I'm just trying to say, is there going to be a loop back to the,
to the comments that we got.
To the code enforcement side, it sounds, to some of Bob's questions, you know, like, what are we doing to move this along and make sure that, it's not a mandate, I guess, to have a tree or whatever, but, to take care of the tree, but at least make it onto somebody, this is somebody's responsibility. But it's the city's responsibility, the owner's responsibility, or the association's responsibility. I'd like to see a loop back, I guess, if we're going to do the ordinance into that, see code enforcement.
So you'd like to see code enforcement in the ordinance?
Well, I'm not
Or just a
saying-
reference to it,
Just
just
a
reference to it?
So that, this is it, these are our standards, and this will be,
I can do that.
unified,